Keeping your hands clean is one of the most important steps you can take to avoid getting sick and spreading germs to others. So be wise and wash your hands regularly to keep those germs at bay. Get more tips for healthy living by tuning into Kaieteur Radio every Monday at 1:05 p.m. for Your Health Matters.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another segment of Your Health Matters here on Kaieteur Radio. I'm your host, Rihanna Ramsey, and today we will be talking about breastfeeding and what you need to know. Our topic is taken from World Breastfeeding Week, which was observed on August 1st to 7th of this month. And today we have with us Ms. Gillian Trim, a public health nutritionist and national breastfeeding coordinator at the Food Policy Division of the Ministry of Health. Good afternoon, Ms. Trim.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to our listeners.
So, Ms. Trim will be shedding some light on this topic. This is something that every woman needs to be aware of, because especially if she wants to become a mother or an expectant, or even the ones who are already in the process of becoming mothers. And it is something that some people see as taboo, but it is very it's a topic that we really need to go down into, because as I was doing my research about breastfeeding, I realized that there are certain things that we haven't really touched on, and I'm hoping that Ms. Trim would be able to give us some light or some knowledge on some of the things that we would experience as women as we venture into motherhood. So I'll just give you a little bit about what World Breastfeeding Week is about before we go into our discussion. So World Breastfeeding Week aims to highlight the huge benefits that breastfeeding can bring to both the health and welfare of babies, as well as a wider push for maternal health focusing on good nutrition, poverty reduction, and food security. This year, World Breastfeeding Week was marked under the theme Protect Breastfeeding, a Shared Responsibility. The theme is aligned with the thematic Area 2 of the World Breastfeeding Week SDG 2030 campaign, which highlights the links between breastfeeding and survival, health, and well-being of women and children and the nations. There are a host of nutritional and other benefits associated with breastfeeding, which can be later talked about in our discussion. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about before we talk about the benefits is for expectant mothers and those who have never had children before. I came across something on the web, and it shows that for a lot of women, the first-time mothers, there are a lot of discomfort when it comes to breastfeeding. Can you touch on that for us, and how do we deal with it?
All right. Well, before we get into your question, I would want to say that the first thing I would like to say is breastfeeding is ordained by God. It is intended for mothers to breastfeed.
Yes.
And how do we know that? There are several reasons. One, the child comes with their food in these two beautiful containers, some a little larger than others, but nevertheless, beautiful containers. That's one. And two, each child is born knowing how to suckle. They're born with that reflex.
Yes.
They're just out and you put them to the breast and they will suckle. So for those two reasons and many other reasons, we know that breastfeeding is ordained by our Heavenly Father. It is His intention for mothers to breastfeed their babies. One of the things that we like to promote is exclusive breastfeeding. And exclusive breastfeeding means breast milk alone for the first 6 months of life, from birth to 6 months. And it means giving the child breast milk alone, no water, no other food or drink is given. Breast milk is quite adequate for the child's nutritional growth and overall development. So we promote exclusive breastfeeding, but after 6 months, their breast milk is not enough. Not that the breast milk is deficient, but it's not sufficient.
Yes.
Because remember, baby's growing and they're moving around, so
Appetite.
they need more. Right, they need more energy and they need more nutrients. So we do not ask the mother to stop breastfeeding at 6 months. She continues breastfeeding until the child is 2 years and beyond. But we ask that she introduces complementary foods. And complementary foods are foods that you add from the family pot. Right? Not corn kernels, not cheese sticks, not all of these other junk foods, from the family pot. So what you eat, baby can eat. We just have to ensure that it's at a consistency that the child can swallow and can digest it properly. So complementary foods, yes, are added until the child comes off the breast, and then the child gets their full nutrition from the other foods from the family pot.
So I was asking you, given that I'm not a mother as yet, so I was asking you about something that I came across and about the discomfort and so on. So
Yes,
let's
a
talk about
mother
that.
can experience discomfort while breastfeeding. You can have cracked nipples, or you can have sore nipples, or you can have breast engorgement. And all of these could be as a result of the baby not latching on properly. For the child, for breastfeeding to be successful, the child has to latch on to the breast, not to the nipple, which means that the large area, the dark area, what we call the areola, needs to be in the child's mouth. If the child is just sucking on the nipple, we find that the nipple gets pressed to the roof of the mouth, of the child's mouth, and it can be very painful. It can cause cracked nipples, as if he's doing it like that on a constant basis. So to correct that and to facilitate healing, we show mothers how to ensure that their babies attach, what to look for. We tell mothers, ensure that they pull the babies to them, belly to belly, not belly to sky. You aim the nipple to the child's nose, and you wait until the child has opened their mouth very wide, like a yawn. Then you bring the child onto the breast. So you know a large area goes into the child's mouth. The child's chin must be touching the mother's breast. So it's a close encounter. And as long as the child has a large portion of the areola in the mouth, they're able to squeeze the milk out of that. That's where the milk is stored. They're able to squeeze it out and feed properly. Next is breast engorgement that can cause pain. And breast engorgement comes because remember, breast milk is being manufactured all the time. And if it is not being removed on a regular basis, it tends to fill up in the breast, and it causes tightness, and it could be very tender to the touch. And if left for long, she could experience a fever and would have to use maybe paracetamol or some other pain relief. So to prevent pain, any kind of pain, whether it's engorgement, whether it's cracked nipples or sore nipples, attachment is the key. Baby has to be attached properly.
And this issue, have you seen it a lot in terms of?
Yes, we have. And one of the reasons in dealing with that is that we train, because one of the things that I do is training, national training. I go through all the 10 regions and I train health workers, because they're the ones that are interacting with the mothers. So I have videos and we have demonstrations where we show the health workers, listen, this is what you need to teach the mother. Even before they leave the hospital, the midwives are supposed to ensure that she breastfeeds, and she breastfeeds successfully, and that she's able to identify the signs of attachment, so that when she leaves the hospital, she'll be able to attach her baby properly, so she wouldn't have any of those nipple issues or breast pain issues.
And in cases where it occurs, how do you treat it? Is there like a treatment regimen?
But one of the things that helps to heal cracked nipples is her very own breast milk, because breast milk has antibodies in it. So we tell her, even though the nipple is cracked, she can still feed the baby from that cracked nipple. But what she has to do is, after she's finished feeding, take some of the breast milk and rub it on and leave it in the air to dry. And you'll be surprised how quickly it heals, and she's able to breastfeed comfortably again. When it comes to breast engorgement, if the breast is too engorged, baby will not be able to latch on, because the nipple gets very tight.
Swollen.
Right. So with that, we encourage her to use a warm compress, so as to enable the letdown. And if she can express with her hand and get some of the milk out, so the breast now can be very soft, so the baby can attach. And I usually tell mothers to, or tell the health workers to tell the mothers that you can let daddy assist you with removing some of the milk. A lot of them turn up their noses at that, but he doesn't have to swallow it. He can just assist to remove it, to give her some relief and to make the breast a little soft so that baby can attach properly.
Yeah, it's part of life. What can you say? So, in terms of like when a woman from gestation, the period of gestation until birth, how soon do you start seeing that breast milk coming in?
Well, as from the moment that she is pregnant, from conception, the body starts preparing itself. Mothers will see milk at varying stages. Some see very early as 6 months into their pregnancy, some a little later, right? But the breast milk that comes just after birth, which is the colostrum, which is the very rich in antibodies and very high in protein for the baby. And we usually refer to that milk as baby's first immunization because of the amount of antibodies that it has in it. So that's your baby's first line of defense, breastfeeding. So we encourage mothers to breastfeed, let the baby get that colostrum, because remember, when baby's born, the immune system is not developed as yet and so on. So that is provided as a protection or as a defense for your baby, that first milk, which is called colostrum, which can be either thick and yellowish, or it can even be clear. Some people may see it as clear and they might say, oh no, maybe it's not. But the color depends on the mother's diet, what she eats. So it can either be clear or it can be yellowish, a light yellow or even a darker yellowish color.
You spoke about exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months.
Yes.
But there are cases, maybe rare cases, where a woman does not produce breast milk or she's not producing enough. What do you recommend in those cases?
If a mother is not producing enough breast milk, it could be because she is mixed feeding, because the suckling reflex, or the suckling that happens to the breast, helps to stimulate the production. So we tell mothers, the more you put the baby to the breast, the more the milk will come. So if you are giving the baby anything else other than breast milk, as their milk production will reduce, because there is what is called an inhibitor factor. Because if the breast milk is not being removed, this inhibitor factor kicks in and reduces the production of milk. So what we encourage mothers to do is to breastfeed on demand. And on demand means when baby is ready. Not that you're looking at the clock for every 2 hours. As soon as you see the cues, the feeding cues, the baby, those are the signs that the baby gives you that they're ready to feed, you feed your baby. Right, and as long as the breast milk is being removed, you're going to production, especially at nights, right? So it means that, seeing that we breastfeed on demand, it means that, baby run things. Baby is the boss.
So there aren't cases where women don't produce?
Yes, they're up to, I was speaking to a doctor who said that she didn't produce any breast milk, but yet her breasts were engorged, which means that the milk was being manufactured, but somehow
it wasn't coming out.
Exactly.
But
when I had a talk with her, I discovered that 1 month soon after she had given birth, her father passed. So she was under some heavy stressful conditions, and stress can cause your breast milk not to come. Right? So we have to ensure that mothers are calm and that she decides in her head, because it starts up in your mind, it starts in your head. The decision to breastfeed, this, and I want to breastfeed. So there's where it starts. So if you find a mother is in very stressful or in violent environments, it can cause her breast milk not to come, or not to come in as is required. So there are persons like that, but those are in very rare cases where you do not get any breast milk at all.
In those rare cases, what do you, in terms of, is there a supplement that can replace breast milk?
Baby has to be fed, right?
So you have to.
Right. So the fed baby is better than a baby that is not fed. So in a case like that, we will have to introduce a breast milk substitute, right? And the doctors will guide as it relates to that. And also the Ministry of Health's policy is that mothers who are HIV positive do not breastfeed. That's their policy. So even those mothers would also have to use the breast milk substitute. And that is usually supplied to them by the Ministry of Health, so they can come to the health center and get their supplies for whatever period. And then they're taught how to mix the feed, because we don't want them to mix it in such a way that it's deficient. The child has to get optimum nutrition. So they're taught, they're taken privately, and they're taught exactly how to mix the feed and how to feed it to the baby. And they're also taught about the cues, the feeding cues, because even those babies will give the feeding cues, so they will know, they'll be able to indicate to their mothers when they're ready to feed. And I usually tell persons that, crying is usually the last cue. Right? When baby cries, is because mommy has missed all other cues. Them putting the fingers in the mouth, squirming, becoming fussy, turning the head from side to side, the rapid eye movement. All of those are cues that the baby gives to mommy. But if mommy misses those cues, then is when she cries. He or she cries. Then at that point, mommy now has to settle a fussy baby and feed the baby. So if a mother can identify the cues and feed her baby on time, she wouldn't have a child that cries because they're hungry. Maybe because they're hot or a dirty diaper or something else, but not because they're hungry.
I also, I do my research before I come on the show. So I also came across something where not here, not in this country, but overseas, where mothers are helping out other mothers with their breast milk. They're selling the breast milk. I don't know how safe, or if you would recommend that kind of thing.
Well, I know that we have what is called breast milk banks. That's mothers who produce a lot of milk. They can have it stored in a breast milk bank.
Here in Guyana?
No, not here. We don't have it here. Sorry. I know Brazil has a breast milk bank. I think Honduras has breast milk bank. And mothers can go and get human milk for their babies, because that beats any other milk, I would say. And let's say a child is an orphan.
Yes.
Right? And the child needs to be fed. You can get the breast milk from the breast milk bank and you can feed the child. But the concerns that we have about that is in connection with HIV and AIDS, right, and that kind of thing. So with that, it is not frowned upon, but it's not readily accepted. But another thing that I know is done is called wet nursing. We don't do that here, where we have mothers who produce a lot of milk, and they feed the children. I know it's done in Africa, but it's not encouraged here too, because of the same reasons, HIV and AIDS and other diseases and so on. But those are other ways of having the child receive human milk, breast milk banks, or wet nursing.
All right. So we had quite a bit from Ms. Trim, who is a nutritionist at the Ministry of Health, Food Policy Division, and she is telling us about breastfeeding and what we need to know. So we'll just take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll talk more about, she'll share more on the topic.
Kaieteur Radio, keeping you informed.
Demerara and Essequibo 99.1 FM.
Burby's 99.5 FM. Kaieteur Radio.
Oh, welcome back to the program. You're listening to Your Health Matters here on Kaieteur Radio. I'm your host, Rihanna Ramsey, and we are talking with Ms. Gillian Trim, a public health nutritionist attached to the Ministry of Health, and she's talking to us about breastfeeding and what we need to know. And this is following World Breastfeeding Week, which is observed every first 7 days of the month of August. So, Ms. Trim, you were telling us about some of the indications that women mothers need to look for when they're feeding their, in terms of feeding the baby, not just waiting until the baby cries. And you were talking about the nutritional factor or value of breastfeeding. You were telling me earlier about the nutritional policy, and you need to touch on that in terms of in this whole under this whole topic of breastfeeding. So you, as a public health nutritionist, you can just explain what that is.
All right. Well, as you mentioned, I'm a public health nutritionist, and I'm also the National Breastfeeding Coordinator. Now, as a public health nutritionist, anything that affects health and wellness is a public health issue, right? They go from sanitation to mental issues.
Yes.
But a public health nutritionist is anything nutrition that affects health and wellness. So we deal with issues that cover undernutrition or even overnutrition. Undernutrition, because when we say malnutrition, it can go either way, either over or undernutrition. And you have undernutrition, that's where the child or the person is not getting the enough nutrients for their bodies to function at the optimal level. Then we have overnutrition, like a person who's obese is overnourished, too many calories. So we deal, and we call that the double burden of malnutrition. Because sometimes you find in one area or in one country, you have the double burden. You have persons who are undernourished, then you have persons who are overnourished. And each has its own risk factors associated with it. Now, in the Food Policy Division, we have 4 programs. There's the Nutrition Education Program, Anemia Education Program, Breastfeeding Education Program, and the surveillance. I am responsible for the breastfeeding education program, which is all about education and awareness. And as I mentioned before, I go throughout the length and breadth of Guyana, training health workers and ensuring that breastfeeding is promoted throughout the length and breadth of Guyana. We have a national breastfeeding policy that guides my work, and we also have a national breastfeeding strategy that we use to guide how we conduct ourselves or how we deal with the issue of breastfeeding in Guyana.
So there's a policy and there's a
strategy.
Well, you have to tell us about it just a bit, because I'm not aware what
well,
that is
the
about.
policy outlined to start off by telling us what is breastfeeding. It promotes exclusive breastfeeding. It also tells us about complementary feeding and what is expected. And there's also the code of marketing of breast milk substitutes. We know that seeing that we're promoting breastfeeding, we prefer mothers to breastfeed or rather over giving their children breast milk substitutes or formula. And even the formula manufacturers, they are prohibited from advertising. They're not supposed to advertise. We can't stop them from selling, but they cannot advertise, because that tends to undermine breastfeeding. Because when you look at it, because breastfeeding is difficult, it can be very difficult with the pain, and then mother has to get up in the night. She would prefer not to do that. But because of the love that a mother has for a child and knows of the benefits of breastfeeding, she chooses to do it. So when you find the mother may be experiencing these challenges, she looks at the formula tin and she sees a beautiful baby with a full head of hair, smiling, chubby, playing with their educational blocks. The first thing she may say to herself, if I use that, my baby may look like that. So to prevent all of that, there's an international code of marketing of breast milk substitutes that Guyana is a signatory to, and that prohibits formula manufacturers from advertising their products.
And that's for formula that is built for that first 6-month stage, because we've seen
Yes, especially during 0 to 6 months.
Yes,
especially for that period when exclusive breastfeeding is recommended.
Okay.
Right, but I always say, even after 6 months, you give complementary foods from the family pot, right? So where do we fit the formula? So it's breastfeeding, then foods from the family pot. So your crush and your steamed vegetables and your fruits, you can give the child eggs, whatever you eat, the child can eat too.
Okay, trust me, the formula fits somewhere. We know that.
I don't fit it anywhere in my training.
Okay, so there's the nutritional factor, but also we talk about when you breastfeed, there's also a psychological factor that's there. I don't know if you can touch on that.
That's one of the many benefits of breastfeeding. Breastfeeding is not only about nutrition. It has benefits for the baby. it has benefits for the mother. And for the baby too, it also helps the child to feel reassured, to feel loved, right? That's what, and that close bond, that closeness between mother and baby creates a strong bond that lasts for a lifetime. And that's why you find breastfed children, the mother has a stronger influence over them. And studies have shown that children who are breastfed are less likely to commit crimes, join gangs, and go to prison. Studies have shown that. Yes, and that's because of the strong bond of the mother. The mother has a strong influence over that child. And secondly, breastfed children have a higher IQ. Studies have shown that they are brighter, right? And they catch on very quickly. They go on to higher education. They get the better paying jobs. So that's the second benefit of breastfeeding for our children. They are brighter. And you see it. They catch on. I mean, as an adult, you have to work with your child. But you see them catching on very quickly. They learn very quickly. And they have many points higher in terms of their IQ than a child that has not breastfed.
So I touched on a scenario where a woman is not producing enough or is not producing milk at all. But there's also this scenario of women who are in our dispensation. A lot of women have to go back to work. And might have to go back to work early. So what happens? What do you recommend?
So that they can exclusively breastfeed. Yes, it is possible. It's difficult, but it is possible. And one of the things we always say, and even if you look at the theme for this year, protect breastfeeding, a shared responsibility, which means that she has to get the support. She needs the support not only from her spouse, from other family members, from the healthcare system, and from her workplace, and even indirectly from the government. She needs that support to ensure that breastfeeding is successful. And what we encourage mothers to do, even though they have to go back to work after 3 months, is to express their breast milk. And we usually ask her to start expressing even while she's at home.
Pumping, breast pump.
Right? Yes, pumping is good. Yes, if she can afford a pump, yes. But we promote expression by hand because every mother has 2 hands and she takes them wherever she goes, right? And not all mothers would be able to afford a pump. So we go with hand expression. So we encourage her to express her milk by hand. And even before she leaves, goes back out to work, she can feed that express breast milk to her baby. And also somebody else in the family can feed her express breast milk. So the baby gets accustomed now to getting mommy's milk, but from another source. So she can express and she can leave it. Breast milk can stay at room temperature for up to 8 hours without spoiling, as long as the room is not hot. So that's how super breast milk is, up to 8 hours without spoiling. After 8 hours, you ask her to discard it. It can stay in the fridge, in the lower part of the fridge, for up to 3 to 5 days, right? And she can take it out, reheat it, and give it to her baby. It can stay in the freezing compartment for up to 3 months. So it can be stored. So we tell mothers that whenever you're storing breast milk, ensure that you label it and you put the time so that you will have a first in, first out basis. You use what goes in first in terms of the milk that she has stored. And we also encourage mothers, when you reheating breast milk, you don't put it in a pot to boil. You don't put it in the microwave, because with that you're going to kill off the nutrients. Just set the container in a bowl with hot water. Bring it up to room temperature, because breast milk is not usually hot. Right? Bring it up to room temperature and you can feed that to your baby. So she can do that. She can give it to the caregiver for them to give it to the baby, but she has to express and ensure she keeps removing the milk, so to keep up her milk supply. Another thing we ask mothers to do, if you can find a carer or a daycare that's close to your workplace, so you feed your baby, then you express at home. So you take that to the daycare for the carer to feed the baby. But while she's at work, she's supposed to be given time to go and express in a safe space. And also we want that employees will be able to give her a space in the fridge, a shelf, where she can store the breast milk. So at lunchtime, if she can go, she takes that express breast milk, she feeds up her baby, and she leaves the express breast milk for the carer to give. Then in the afternoon, when she collects, she can do breastfeeding from then on, even through the night, and then back to the same routine the next day. So it can be done. There are mothers at Food Policy who would have exclusively breastfed their babies, even though they had to come back to work after 3 months.
I think you touched on diet earlier. for the woman when she's breastfeeding? Did you?
I didn't. But one of the things that in my training, we talk about the first 1,000 days of life, which are the foundation years and which are the very important years in a child's life. And the first 1,000 days starts from conception. If we count it from conception all the way until the child is 2 years old. So conception, while the mother is pregnant, we deal with nutrition and what is required. Then after, and that's for the 40-week gestation, where you get a certain number, I think it's 280 days.
Yeah.
Then we have the period of exclusive breastfeeding, which is 180 days. Then we have the other period, which is from 6 months to the other 18 months, which is from 6 months to 2 years, which would be breastfeeding and complementary feeding, because we recommend breastfeeding up until the child is 2 years and beyond. So nutrition is very, very important when a mother is expecting. And I know our healthcare system gives the mothers iron and folic acid, and which is very important because those help to build her hemoglobin and build her blood count. And zinc is also very important, and calcium, because remember, calcium is for the formation of bones and teeth. And the child is born with their teeth, but it's just that it's up in the gums, so those need to be formed. She has to ensure that she uses a lot of calcium. But if she eats a balanced diet from all the 6 food groups every day, she'll be able to ensure that she gets the required nutrients for herself and for her baby. So a balanced diet is very, very important, and lots of fluid. She needs to drink. We recommend 8-ounce glasses of fluid every day.
It doesn't have to be water. It could be...
Well, some schools of thought say 8-ounce glasses of water in addition to your other fluids, and some say 8-ounce glasses of fluids, which would include your coconut water, your teas, your juices, whatever you drink. So, which it depends on what you read.
You recommend from 0 to 2 years in terms of breastfeeding.
Yes.
Exclusive breastfeeding from 1 to 6
to
months.
6 months, correct.
However, when exactly would a mother stop lactating? When would she stop producing milk?
Well, like I said before, as long as the milk is not being removed, the inhibitor factor kicks in, and that reduces milk production until it is stopped.
Okay.
But if a child keeps suckling or nursing, her mother will continue to produce breast milk. I know, that's why we tell mothers, don't just stop. Although we recommend up to 2 years, we tell the mother, we say 2 years and beyond, as long as the mother and child are comfortable. Say if a mother wants to breastfeed at 3, we say leave her alone. If she wants to breastfeed at 4, leave her alone. Because, we have a way in our Guyanese Creole, we say, why are you still giving this child Bobby? Right? So we say, no, leave the mother. Because at that stage, breastfeeding is not only about nutrition.
Yeah.
It's about comfort, and it's about reassurance. Because let's say a child is scared by a dog or an insect or something. The child runs to the mother.
Psychological.
Puts the breast in the bowl. The child just sucks for maybe a minute or so, or a few seconds, and they're reassured, they feel safe, and they jump and they're gone playing, like I said, it's about their psychological development, their emotional development. It's not only about nutrition. Right? So as long as she's breastfeeding, she will produce milk, and the milk is being removed, she will produce milk. Right? But when she's ready to stop, you just decrease the number of feeds until the child.
Well, we have to talk about how what you'd recommend for weaning. But before I ask that question,
but let me say, weaning is a word we don't use anymore in breastfeeding, because we don't take the child off of the breast. Okay. Weaning is taking the child off of the breast.
Well, you gotta come off sometime.
Well, yes, I agree, but weaning is not a word that we use anymore. It's taken out of the breastfeeding vocabulary.
Well, in terms of like age, because you mentioned you leave them if she has a 4-year, a woman has a 4-year child and breastfeed. But I saw somebody recently had a 6-year-old, and the person still, and I was a little bit worried. Is there like a recommended age? Like, what would you say?
Well, after 2, you can start that process. But please breastfeed up until the child is 2 years. We say and beyond, yes, but no less than 2 years. Take the child to 2 years and maybe a little over 3 years or so. Because I know of parents who go to pick up their children from nursery school and they have to sit and breastfeed before they take the child home. So I don't let it, but it pleases my heart when I see that. Because like I said, it's not only about nutrition. It says that, the bond between the mother and child is a very strong bond, and the child is getting so much reassurance of the mother's love and her presence and everything. It's more than just nutrients. Because the thing is, from birth to 6 months, the child gets all the nutrients from the breast milk. Between 6 months and 1 year, the child gets half of the nutrients from the breast milk. Right? The other half comes from the complementary food. And from 1 year to 2 years, the child gets 1/3 of their energy or their nutrients from the breast milk. So it still serves a nutritional purpose, but and like I said, you have to complement it with foods from the family pot.
So you're saying that, we don't use the term weaning. So you have to educate us today, because I've been using that term for forever.
Because when we updated our breastfeeding policy, that was a word we took out from the breastfeeding
so what
policy.
replaced that term?
We tell the mother up until she is ready, right? So she can do that process slowly, right? Because to me, weaning it sounds so brash and so rush, but it's not. That's not the way it has to be done. Let her do it gradually and slowly, and as the inhibitor factor kicks in, the breast milk production will reduce till eventually the child themselves don't want the breast anymore. I'm a big boy, I don't use the breast anymore. These kind of things that we would hear them say.
So we are in the pandemic, and we're talking about breastfeeding, and we know that women can use medication given that their doctor prescribes while they're breastfeeding. And some women, a lot of women have, especially those who are expecting and those who are mothers, breastfeeding mothers, they're a little bit cautious about taking the COVID-19 vaccines. What can you say to them to reassure them?
Yes. And the thing is, even if a mother is suspected of having COVID or she is confirmed, she can breastfeed. Because I know mothers because it's a new pandemic, it's a new virus, and I'm sure mothers will be concerned about transmitting the virus to their babies. But to date, the virus is not found in amniotic fluid, so it means that she cannot transmit it during pregnancy, and it is not found in breast milk, so she cannot transmit it through breastfeeding. The only way she can transmit the virus to her baby is if she coughs or sneezes or droplets gets on her baby. So we encourage mothers, even if you're suspected of having COVID-19 or you're confirmed, ensure that you protect your baby by wearing a mask and by washing your hands often. When you feed baby, you wash your hands. You clean baby, you wash your hands. You're dealing with livestock or you clean your homes, you wash your hands at all times. Ensure that, and the mask that she's wearing, you wear it for a certain period of time and then you can discard it, put on another mask. But to protect your baby. But we encourage breastfeeding because the benefits of breastfeeding far outweigh the risk of what COVID-19 can cause. So if you deny the baby those benefits, because the risk of not breastfeeding could be fatal. Could be fatal because over 800,000 infants die every year worldwide because of poor infant feeding practices, which includes breastfeeding.
But in terms of the vaccine?
Yes. In terms of the vaccine, PAHO had a meeting with us, I think it was a few weeks ago, and they have stated that yes, the mother who's breastfeeding can take the vaccine because it is not something that is alive. So because if it was something that was alive that they were injecting, they said, well then in that case she will not be able to take the vaccine. So because it is not alive, she can take the vaccine. Because so breastfeeding mother can take the COVID-19 vaccine.
And this is because the vaccine is a booster, really. It's an immune booster.
Yes, exactly.
All right. So in terms of if somebody has a question or we didn't cover that issue that they want answered, where can they go?
Well, you can come to our office at 216 Lamaha Street. That's between Camp and Waterloo. You're going to see the Ministry of Public Health sign. You can come to the top floor and ask any questions. Or you can call us on 223-9703 or 223-9704, and we'll be ready and willing to answer your questions. We have a lot of brochures. We have a lot of pamphlets, anything on breastfeeding. But not only breastfeeding, anemia, nutrition, breastfeeding. We have that information.
And this is the food policy
right,
division.
Food policy division, Ministry of Health, and we are at the top floor.
Okay, well, I think that brings us to the end of our show today.
Could you allow me to give some more benefits? I don't know if you have time.
Okay, yes.
Benefits of breastfeeding. We have benefits for the baby, as I mentioned. I mentioned a few of them. We have breastfeeding for the mother. We have we have benefits, for the family and also for the environment. Would you believe that breastfeeding is environmentally friendly?
No, well, you have to tell us.
All right, well, let me start with the benefits of breastfeeding for the baby. We know that it guarantees the best start in life. And when I say guarantees, it guarantees the best start in life. And I mentioned before about the colostrum being baby's first immunization because of the antibodies that is sent down in the breast milk. And even if a mother is sick, we encourage her to continue to breastfeed because the antibodies that she produces for herself, it is sent down in the breast milk to protect the baby. Even if the baby is sick, because of the closeness between the mother and the mother prepares the antibodies and sends it down for the child. That's how wonderful this whole breastfeeding thing is. Babies, like I mentioned before, breastfed babies have a higher IQ. They are brighter and they lead better lives later on. So breastfeeding has long-term effects later on down the road. Babies who are breastfed don't experience constipation. No constipation for babies on breast milk. If you see a mother has to come back to a clinic because her baby's constipated, you believe me, she's mixed feeding. She's giving formula, she's giving something else. Breast milk is so easily digested. It is designed for the flora and fauna of the child's gut, and they do not get constipated. Next, breast milk protects the baby against infections. Very protective. Ear infection, diarrhea, pneumonia, dental caries, which is rotting teeth. Breast milk prevents rotting teeth and other respiratory diseases. And as I mentioned before, it provides safety and comfort and the reassurance of a mother's love. And some of the benefits to a mother is that it reduces her risk of developing ovarian cancer and breast cancer. So if she breastfeeds, the risk of developing those two cancers are reduced, significantly reduced. It helps to promote child spacing. If a mother breastfeeds exclusively, the ovulation process is stopped. She does not ovulate. So you wouldn't find her getting pregnant, and sometimes it lasts over a year. But she has to breastfeed exclusively. The moment she starts to mix feed, she doesn't enjoy that protection. Because I know how distressing it is where a mother has a baby 3 months or 6 months and discovers that she's pregnant again. So what it does too, it enables the mother now to focus on this one baby, direct all of her attention, her resources, her time, her energy to this one baby, so they ensure that the baby gets a good start in life. And then when she's ready now, we say after 2 years, this gives her body time to recover and to replenish in terms of nutrients and so on. She can have the baby afterwards. So it helps too, because ovulation doesn't take place, it helps with child spacing. And I did mention before that it helps to relieve breast engorgement. If the breast milk is being removed on demand by the baby, the breast doesn't get engorged and doesn't get tight and painful. And it also helps to restore her shape. You know, before she got pregnant and so on, she had this beautiful, what we call the Coca-Cola shape. But it helps her to regain her shape, because breastfeeding, what it does, it pulls the womb back into position, and it also helps her to regain her shape by, during pregnancy, a mother gains weight, and there's a reason for her gaining that weight. That fat that she gains is converted into milk fat. That fat is ready for your baby. It is converted, it's manufactured into the breast milk, and it is sent down to fatten the baby. So if she doesn't breastfeed, the fat stays on her. Okay. So breastfeeding helps you to lose your weight and to get back your original shape. And like we said, it saves time and money. She doesn't have to go to the supermarket, doesn't have to spend money to go there. She doesn't have to buy fuel. She doesn't have to boil any water. She doesn't have to sterilize anything. It is there, readily available, balanced diet, and everything that the baby needs. It's convenient, saves time in the middle of the night. She doesn't have to get up to go to light a stove. Right there, everything is there for the baby. And also it contributes to our environment. Breastfeeding is environmentally friendly. How, I usually ask the question, how do you think that breastfeeding is environmentally friendly? That's because when a mother uses formula or she uses feeding bottles,
Yes.
she has to discard the tins.
Yes.
And that goes into the environment. And we know that they're not biodegradable, so it takes years for it to break down. So with that help to destroy their environment.
Oh, so we'll just go to a short break, and when we come back, we'll just hear more about the benefits.
Yes, as I was saying, that breastfeeding helps to protect our environment. It's environmentally friendly. And the formula tins that we buy and the feeding bottles that we buy, they have to be discarded. And they take years to break down in their environment. But in terms of breastfeeding, you don't have any waste, right? No waste at all. And I guarantee you wouldn't find any breasts in the landfill sites. So it's environmentally friendly. That's one way. And also it's a green initiative. I like to tell people it's a green initiative, which means it helps to protect our atmosphere and our ozone layer. How so? The formula manufactured to make the thins or to make the actual formula, it has to be done in a plant. And plants have to work, and they work using fuel.
Yes.
That's what generates the power or whatever.
Yes.
And as long as you have burning of fossil fuel, you have carbon monoxide, you have all of these gases that are emitted into the air. Now, when it's finished and the formula is finished, it is packaged, it has now to get it to all of these retail outlets all over the world, whether by air, whether by land, or whether by sea. And all of these vehicles burn fuel.
Yes.
And all of those things set out all of these gases that destroy our environment. So that does not happen at all with breastfeeding. Even though breastfeeding is manufactured and is being manufactured 24 hours a day, there are no gases, nothing is emitted. So breastfeeding helps to protect the environment. And you also mentioned about the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. Breastfeeding is linked to each one of those there's 17. Each one of those 17 Sustainable Development Goals.
Yes. So thank you so much, Ms. Trim. You were quite entertaining and educational at the same time. for those who listened, thank you for tuning in. We are always glad to have you. We are always glad to have your questions online.
I just want to say that breastfeeding is everybody's business. Let's all protect, promote, and support breastfeeding.
Yes. So you hear that? You heard it from Miss Trim. And so I was saying, we always glad to have you on Kaieteur Radio. We're always happy to hear from you. We are streaming on Facebook, and if you have a question, we're always willing to interact with you and answer those questions. So please join us every week as we continue shedding light on our issues related to your health and well-being. Thank you. Goodbye.